Raby, you do have a quorum.
Wonderful. Ms. Greenlee, do we have any public comments for today?
We do not have any public comments for today, Chairperson Raby.
Thank you. For our minutes from the July 25th Citizen Advisory Board, can we get a motion to approve those? Ms. Greenlee, do we?
Motion to approve. Second.
It's been moved by Robert Castaneda, seconded by Peter Henderson, that the minutes from July 25th, 2025 be approved. We'll take a roll call vote. Robert Castaneda,
Yes.
Peter Henderson.
Yes.
Ryan Raby.
Yes.
Caroline Pavlovic.
Yes.
Ryan McCray.
Yes.
Scott Vanderwill.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Wonderful. All right, so next on the agenda is the EAB report from the chair. I had the opportunity to sit in the August general board meeting, and it was a very lively conversation about a number of things. I was able to give a report on where CAB was and just kind of some of our desires as a group, to be able to be more present in a lot of the CTA events and just kind of having a better understanding of how what role we play in some of that and some of the decision making and just other areas of the agency. And so Chair Barclay is very interested in hearing those concerns directly. So we are in the process of setting up a meeting with myself as well as the chair of the ADA committee. So we will be meeting with him jointly. If there are any concerns from this group that you all want to share directly with Chairman Barclay, please feel free to share those with me so that that can be part of that conversation. I don't have much else to say about that, but I do. Are we ready?
I'm going to move to the working session.
To the working section. Okay. So the next item of the agenda is the CAB working session. So we do have a presentation from our safety transit ambassadors. And so I would like to welcome them up to have that presentation for us. So Veronica.
I'm sorry, Veronica Alanis.
So we're clear, we had to switch the agenda around just a little bit. And so we'll have you come up in a few moments, okay? All right.
My presentation up?
If
Yeah, it's,
that
yeah,
is Flora,
I see it.
this is not what we're doing right now. We're doing Flora
Yeah.
Castile. Is she on Zoom?
Yeah, she's on Zoom.
And does she have slides? Does she have slides, Veronica?
They're part of this presentation.
That's not it.
No,
I've only been given this.
You don't have Flora's presentation?
it's the same presentation.
Slides are on here.
It's a different set of
It's a
slides.
different set of slides. That's Jenna's presentation right now.
No, I know. You just,
Flora's,
Screen's up there. This is like showing that she just needs to share the right screen.
Okay,
can you help us, please? Thank you.
thank you. Does Jenna need to stop sharing her slide?
No,
Please?
oh, okay. Actually, can you stop sharing from over there? Thank you. I wasn't showing.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. So my name is Veronica Alanis. I'm the Chief Operating Officer. This morning, I'm being joined also via the Zoom link by Flora Castillo. She is with Pivot Strategies, consultant that we brought on board to help us as we look to develop some new innovative approaches to managing some of the security challenges we see on CTA. So I'll let Flora say hello.
Good afternoon, everyone. Flora Castillo, good to be with you.
So this morning, we are going to be talking specifically about a new concept that we are in the process of developing. It's called the Safe Ride Ambassadors pilot. We had a transit community safety workshop back in August 28th, where we engaged a variety of organizations to come together to help us form ideas and have discussions around how we form these Safe Ride Ambassadors. This was a half-day workshop that we organized on the 28th, and we had over 60 external entities, different organizations from different backgrounds join us during that workshop. Among those were community-based organizations, health and social service professionals, public safety organizations, transportation advocacy organizations, as well as government and transit peers, who actually did a presentation of their own. And we'll talk about that a little later because they have experience with similar concepts like the ones we're trying to establish here at CTA. We also had over 25 CTA employees who attended the workshop. These were employees from across various relevant departments, security, operations. We even had members of our board. Our own acting president, Nora Learson, was also part of the program and gave some remarks around the importance of exploring new approaches to some of the challenges that we face. I do want to give a shout out to Latanya Raby, who also, as the chair of the Citizens Advisory Committee, was able to join us. And so thank you for your time, because I think it's important that we get the input from as many people as possible. So I appreciate that. And then, as I mentioned, Pivot Strategies is a consultant that we have brought on board to help us with these efforts. The day was facilitated and moderated by Pivot Strategies, specifically for Flora Castillo. They helped us put the workshop together, and they have extensive experience in this space because they've worked with other transit agencies in putting together similar concepts. The other group that was pivotal in such a successful day in putting all this together was our planning and innovation group. As you know, Molly Poppy is the chief chief planning officer, and her group has been extensively involved in that process and continued to work on this project as we're fleshing out the details of what that's going to look like and the opportunities that there'll be for proposals from different organizations who can help us with this concept. So the theme of the workshop was safety through presence, partnership, and people. And we had several goals for the workshop. So one was to provide transparency on current challenges, to give kind of a status of what we at CTA have been dealing with some of the security challenges, where we see different things happening and how we are responding to those challenges and the different resources that we currently have in place to do that. We also, and a big part of the goal of the workshop was to introduce a new ambassador program, which we're calling Safe Ride Ambassadors. And so the Safe Ride Ambassadors are meant to complement the work of the other resources that we already have in place, such as our law enforcement, which is provided primarily by the Chicago Police Department. And some of the suburban police departments were relevant since we do have some stations that are out in the suburbs. It also looks to this concept, and the pilots that we're looking to do are to test various non-law enforcement responses to some of those challenges that are different from the traditional crime type of challenges that require law enforcement. And so we want to test different models that can compassionately engage with people on CTA in a variety of ways. One, to support and provide support services to those in visible crisis. Two, to de-escalate potentially troubling situations and to do it effectively. And then also, keeping the rest of our rider community in mind, to build positive relationships with the broader transit rider community by addressing questions or concerns that may arise. Another goal of the workshop was to get stakeholder feedback as we design these concepts and make sure that we are hearing from stakeholders and people with different expertise in this space to make sure that we are capturing all of the things that we should be thinking about as we are designing what these Safe Ride Ambassador models will look like, as well as identify any resources that we need to make sure we put in place so that they can be successful. And then lastly, we wanted to also bring everyone together so that we could foster a sense of ownership, build trust, and open ongoing channels for collaboration. The other thing I'll say about the stakeholder engagement is that one of the things that we also aim to do was to provide a higher level understanding of our overall security ecosystem so that going into the day, and as we were having discussions around the Safe Ride Ambassadors, they could understand better how these new concepts can fit into the overall ecosystem and have an understanding of our starting point. And then, of course, with the end goal of also forming partnerships, not only so that when we establish and get going with these pilots, there may be some organizations who are interested in providing some of those services, but also to engage them on an ongoing basis throughout that pilot process to make sure that we are sharing what we're learning and they can give us also feedback or suggestions of how we make tweaks along the way. So we had a variety of different organizations that were involved in the workshop. We had both public and private, as I mentioned before, community and transit advocacy groups, mental health, social service professionals, public safety organizations, government and transit peers. We also had representatives from ATU, the Amalgamated Transit Union. So we had a representative from bus, we had a representative from the rail side. And so it was good to have their voice in the room as well. We had representatives from the CTA board. And as I mentioned, we also had representatives from the Citizens Advisory Board with Ms. Raby, who attended, as well as the ADA Advisory Board. Going into the day, or actually prior to going into the day, we surveyed all of the organizations that we invited. We wanted to have an understanding of, what kind of expertise they were bringing with them and what kind of role they wanted to play moving forward as we engage them on on these discussions. One of the things that, or various things that came out of those surveys is a real genuine desire from all of them to help shape these programs, a desire to contribute, and a desire to learn from the peer agencies that we had that were sharing their own experiences around the programs that they have and lessons learned. And then, of course, also a willingness to play a role in coordinating and organizing resources outside of CTA so that we can improve our service and create a benefit for our riders as we look at these new concepts. So as I mentioned, we took a look and a review with the stakeholders on what we currently have in place. But we started with talking about some of the challenges that we face, some which are relatively new in the sense of post-pandemic. There's certain things that we find that we didn't have to face in the past. And so you see here the various types of different behaviors that sometimes people will encounter on the system, and some of the things that we either have resources to address, or we need to find new resources or new approaches to manage those. The security, we had our security team there. They also talked more in depth about what we're seeing across the system, different hotspots, and how different partners and resources are engaged to address that. Our innovation group also presented on some of the customer surveys and what they're telling us in terms of their feeling around security and where they like to see more improvement. And then our CTA operations team walked us through the ripple effects that we will have when we have a disturbance. So it's not just the incident itself of it occurring and the delay that occurs as you're managing through that specific incident. That has a ripple effect throughout the day. It creates residual delays. And, we showed how that happens and how this is not just important because we want to address the issues, but it also ends up affecting our service. And so if we want to improve service, we have to find effective ways to address some of these incidents. And then I talked about our layered comprehensive approach to managing some of these challenges. And you'll see the slide has different puzzle pieces that show the various layers that we have, from human resources, whether those are in the form of police, security guards, our own employees, the CSA, CSRs, a very important one being the resources that we have out doing outreach and sheltered on CTA, which has been a very effective program. And I was having a conversation with somebody earlier, something we should share in more detail with the CAB. But then there's also other resources such as technology. We have over 39,000 cameras that are very helpful in allowing us to not only follow up on incidents, but serve as a resource for the police department. They have access to all of our cameras at a location called the Strategic Decision Support Center, where they can immediately engage and see what's going on with the cameras. Yeah, a lot of what we're talking about with our technology these days is how do we build upon what we have? We have cameras, but how can we make them smarter, right? And one of the things that we have been doing over the last several months is piloting a gun detection technology. that we have found to be effective, and we're looking at expanding in the coming year. And then there's infrastructure layers here, right? One of the things we've done, for example, is we have replaced all of our previous ADA gates at the rail stations with high barrier ADA gates that help deter fare evasion. So as you can see, there's a variety of different pieces, but the point of this slide is that, the puzzle's never finished. There's always other things that we can look at. And we know that other transit agencies have tried some of these new concepts of ambassadors. They have been effective at those locations. And we also know that our rider community has been interested and advocated for this. And so that is what is shown on this slide is that we have other pieces that we want to put that will complement what we already have and will help be more effective tools under certain situations. So then we moved on to, as part of the program, to hear from our peer agencies. We had 3 peer agencies that talked about their own programs and their experience in developing those programs, their approaches to rolling them out, and where they're at today. I'm going to turn it over at this time to Flora Castillo so that she can walk us through some of the insights that our peer agencies shared on that particular day.
Thank you so much, Veronica, and good afternoon again. As Veronica mentioned, for our efforts, it was really important for us to look across the country and bring insights in terms of what has worked and has not worked for transit agencies that have been working at the intersection of trying to create a stronger, safer systems. And so as we discovered, transit agencies have been solutioning on this issue pre-pandemic and post-pandemic. And so I was able to bring TriMet, Metro Transit, which is in Minneapolis, and BART, which serves the greater San Francisco area. And just to give you some context, TriMet in Portland serves 3 counties, Metro Transit serves 7 counties, and BART serves 5 counties. What was evident throughout the hour or so that we share with them during this time was that there's so many lessons learned as well as key commonalities. From a TriMet Portland perspective, just also to level set, they've started a pilot 2 years ago with 7 safety response ambassadors. And they have now moved to enhance that with Metro. Similarly, they started as a pilot. They started small with funding that was provided by the state. And with BART, they started their crisis intervention specialist ambassador program as a pilot as well. Across all 3 agencies, they share with us that clearly their work is a work in progress, and constantly they share with us that trying to solution on this involves multiple types of interventions that traditionally lie outside of the standard transit operations. They notice and emphasize that it's very important for agencies to start small and iterate and change strategies and approaches as you learn from each of the deployments. Similarly, they mentioned that crisis and safe ambassadors complement but do not replace transit police, customer service attendants, and other security officers. And that was true from Minneapolis as well as TriMet. TriMet does not have a transit police. They outsource their law enforcement similar to Chicago. And they've, that was something that really stood out among what they share with us. The last thing they shared with us was that, from the onset, they did a lot of engagement to then come up with the different approaches, and using data, they deployed their different teams. But really, they focused on visibility, ensuring that their engagement was empathetic, and they require a lot of training, education, and communication. And so we know that at the end of the day, every single transit agency that is dealing with this issue is approaching it from a human-centered perspective, to create a safer environment, not only for the riders, but also primarily as well for the employees. Veronica?
Thank you, Flora. So after we had the presentations by the peer transit agencies, we moved on to a breakout activity where people at different tables had specific personas, gave them, and specific scenarios, real life scenarios that we sometimes are encountered on our system. And they were tasked with giving us their ideas of, okay, what should a Safe Ride ambassador look like if we're there dealing with this specific type of scenario? You'll see here we have the different body pieces of how we discussed how we would design some of these models, and we asked for participants' ideas and feedback around how to do that. The response model being the head really is specific to the scenario or situation that's being encountered. The body, where it says policy and practice, we were looking to flesh out what should this ambassador dealing with this type of scenario handle situations, what kind of training will they need, right? What do we want that to look like? And then we had the limbs that talked about all of the other things that will help that ambassador be successful, whether it's different resources that might be technology, that might be information about external resources that they should be aware of as they're encountering and engaging with people on the system, the partners, the kinds of partners that we're going to need, the communication, how do we socialize what this ambassador is and is doing on the system, and educating the general public about when you see someone who's wearing a certain type of shirt or vest, right? This is who they are, this is what they're doing, and this is what we should expect from them. And then also discussing evaluation and reporting, what are the things that we want to measure, we want to look for in order to determine if we're achieving our goals, some success metrics around that. Some of the personas that we discussed during the workshop were around disruptive behavior, mental health crisis, or just riders who may be witnessing an event and feel uncomfortable and need more support. And so, as I said, the breakout group fleshed out all of the competencies and policies that we would require from an ambassador dealing with those situations, as well as some of the other ancillary aspects that we need to put in place to make them successful. So here are just some photos of the workshop and the work that was being done during the various breakout sessions. After the breakout sessions, we did move on to have a report out so that everybody could benefit from the discussions that happened at the various tables. And share the various ideas. Obviously, different ideas came out of the different breakout groups, partly because they were dealing with different scenarios, but we are in the process of compiling all that together that then will be part of a overall report that is related to the report out that happened at the workshop. There's some more pictures of people filling out their sticky notes with their ideas of how these Safe Right ambassadors should be designed and what their competencies should be and how they should manage different situations. And so then, we ended the day with letting folks know that we were going to, number one, do a survey to see how what we could do better when we next engage. And then also to see what they liked about the workshop, what else they wanted to discuss moving forward. We also agreed that we would prepare a report of everything that was discussed that day and then share that broadly, not only to the participants that attended the workshop, but, also to our board to make it available to anyone who wants to see it. And then, as a next step, we are working on really fleshing out everything that came out of that day so that we can start forming some specific, requirements around starting to solicit partners for this work. And so that's work that's ongoing right now. We anticipate having that ready before the end of the year and having a process where we start selecting partners at the beginning of next year. So that concludes my presentation. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Veronica. That was a very interesting presentation. And like you said, I had been in attendance, so it was also nice to get a refresher of all of the things that were covered that day. And as you were speaking, I was thinking about some of the folks that were in the breakout session that I was in. I happened to be seated at a table with the union rep for the ACU, I think on the bus operator side. And just kind of like thinking about some of the concerns that came out of some of those conversations about safety for, operators, because they are the only CTA representative on those vehicles. Just thinking about how this kind of work would support them in those spaces. Additionally, some of the other thoughts that came to mind were I know that the idea is that this is a complementary role and is not intended to replace any employee or anyone that is a part of the CTA security team. But we know that there are some, there's understaffing, especially when it comes to CPD and that arrangement with CPD on being, the part of the police force for a CTA. So some of the questions that this group had, I think when Molly would first kind of introduce some of these ideas, was about like, how do we make sure that these ambassadors aren't looked at in that way where they're like a replacement for that because they're not equipped to be a police force. They are a supportive group. Just wondering like what, after this meeting, were there additional thoughts that have come out about like how to make sure that difference is clear, and then also how to make sure that if like the staffing that's needed you know, how do we increase that? How do we fill those roles that are empty right now?
Sure. So I think you raise a very important aspect of the discussion. You know, one of the things that I know, because I was at the workshop and I was at a table that came out of my team, and I know across the board was how the different pieces come together, right? And a lot of that has to do with process, right? So that, because to your point, our system is very large. We're never going to have enough resources to have the right type of resource at every corner of the system. But how do you make sure that if there is a situation that gets called in, usually something gets called into our control center, that dispatching process, what does it look like, right? So that ideally you want the right type of resource to respond to that specific scenario. But there may be instances where that's not possible because you don't have any of those types of resources that are nearby. So then how do you then get somebody to at least respond who's closest? And then how do you make sure that the right resource gets to that person eventually, right? And so those are some of the things that we need to flesh out. But the main way that part of that's going to happen, although we're thinking about it, is when we bring on our partners, they're going to be the experts. We want them to tell us, ideally, this is how it should work, right? And if we're only going to have, these are pilots, so that there's not going to be a lot of teams. But, you know, in that pilot phase, what should that process, that communication process of reporting something, dispatching resources and what have you look like? And then in a scenario where then we're able to scale up, what does that look like more broadly? So thank you for bringing that up. That's a very important aspect of this. And then the coordination, right? Sometimes there are instances where you need multiple resources engaged. And we've started doing some of that with, I'm sure you've heard of the anti-smoking missions that we're holding at different parts of our rail system. While our security canine services are taking the lead in doing that enforcement, CPD is part of that, and CPD is always nearby in case things escalate, right? So that's an instance where we have found that that partnership is important in order to be effective and not create a bigger situation, but rather, you know, just deal with the situation. And if it starts escalating, get the right resource in place so that it doesn't go beyond that.
Thank you. And I have two more questions. Remind me of how long this phase will be?
The pilots we want to do for at least 6 months.
Okay.
Obviously, if we feel we need to do longer, we will do longer. But we think 6 months will give us a good sense of what's working, what we need to tweak, what's not working.
Okay. And then the last question, you mentioned the piloting of gun detection tech. I'm curious, could you tell me a little bit more about that? Like, how does that work? And in the event that a gun is detected, what is the next step?
So this particular technology will identify brandished firearms. And so the way it works basically is that it's the shape of anything that looks like a gun, whether it's a big gun or a small gun. So this is software that's overlaid on our cameras. When that happens, there's an automatic alert that goes to the company's name, Zero Eyes, the company's dispatch center. They have teams of people with either military law enforcement background that will get those images, and they will do like a human verification of this is indeed a real firearm. You know, like if a little kid has a toy gun, that that would be caught too, just because of the shape. So they are able to analyze the images, and then if they find that it looks like it could be a real firearm, they will immediately notify, usually under 1 minute, law enforcement and our control center, and then law enforcement will respond. And so we have found that that is an effective tool. There have been instances where law enforcement has arrived and made an arrest because of the fact that they got alerted through this system.
We will recirculate that presentation that Kevin Ryan did on It's Clear Eye,
Zero Eyes.
Zero Eyes to CAB
Okay.
last year. Kevin Ryan from who's over our security team, did present to you all that when we were thinking about.
That was at the same time that there was like this facial recognition conversation.
It was different, two different conversations.
Okay.
Facial came up with more with Molly and Innovations,
Okay.
and the
Zero Eyes.
Zero Eyes with Kevin Ryan.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Veronica. I'll open it up to other CAB members.
Robert Castaneda.
Yeah, so thank you for your presentation. I really feel after hearing the presentation that CTA has a good handle on what the challenges are. And I love the approach that's being taken to address it. And I have a couple of comments, questions, and suggestions. My last 20 plus years of like, this is like my wheelhouse, like how do we use public spaces as vehicles for public safety? And so I love the fact that you refer to it as an ecosystem, because it is very much an ecosystem and there's so many moving parts. And it's the same as if we're building a nature center or a garden. And if we want more of this, we need to do more of this. And if this is out of balance, then how do we, and so that's how this work works. And so I appreciate, that language and that demonstration of understanding. I also appreciated the diversity of partners already engaged, not just both in what they do and where they're located. As a commissioner for the Chicago Park District, I was very pleased to see the Chicago Park District on there. I didn't recall seeing Chicago Public Schools. Were they on there? Or have they been?
Not. No, they were not. But I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, because, and even in the nature of what they do with Safe Passage, right? And like they've had many years of kind of this idea of how do you organize a workforce that's that's definitely recognized and people know what they're doing and there's like engagement and it's supposed to be something like more from a positive angle as opposed to a law enforcement angle.
Sure.
Regarding
And just to continue on that point, we did have the Chicago Park District who participated, but no, Chicago Public Schools was not there. So
and then I saw the City of Chicago logo, but was CDPH specifically, have they been involved?
They have been involved in our discussions, and we actually have a partnership with CDPH where they fund one of the social service organizations to do outreach 2 days a week, the night ministry.
Okay.
We have a different partnership with the Department of Family and Support Services. That's something we fund to do outreach to the unsheltered. And that is a program we are very proud of because it has been tremendously successful in the 2 years that we've been working with them. Over 200 people have moved to stable and permanent housing, but the need is so much greater, right? So this is why you still see people on the system. And so we are continuously working to see how do we better support this work, especially if we're seeing it's having good results. So you're right, there's different partners at the city level that we are engaged with and we need to continue to engage with, and we're happy to invite other sister agencies to the table.
Yeah, the reason why I was specifically asking about CDPH is because over the last couple of years, they've amassed this this large mental health response team. And it had some challenges being used by OEMC and 911 distribution. And I think that's an opportunity for CTA, right? Because I think you find a lot of these mental health teams kind of like waiting and like looking for things to do. And so if there's a way for CTA to be able to directly dispatch when we're getting these things as opposed to if 911 is not utilizing them, like that's I kind of see it as like our potential.
I think you're referring to the care teams.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
With the
Yep.
mobile unit.
Yep.
Yeah.
So a suggestion, right? If it's not already being.
Yeah. No, very, very good suggestion.
And just an observation, one of the things that so I had a conversation, this is like maybe going back like 15 years plus, so with Mary Ann Mason from Northwestern Lower Children's Hospital. And at the time, we were looking at like, how do we get people who, or in communities where there's been high rates of public violence historically, how do we get people to stop like, that's their like behavior, right? Or you react or you do something with like violence. And she shared something with me that kind of changed my whole approach to this work. I'm going to share it with you real quick. And that's that in behavior change sciences, like people don't just wake up one day and then you can change, right? That what has to happen is your perceptions need to change first. And that leads to changes in your behavior. And so when we look at what the science says about how do people's perceptions change, the number one thing we can do to change people's perceptions of their behavior in public spaces is to put people in them, right? And you get the most impact when you have diversity of age and gender. So if there's, little kids, boys and girls, all the way up to elderly, right? When we can fill our public spaces with people, then people who might be historically drivers of negative activities or violence in those spaces, now their perceptions are changed because it never used to look like this. And now it does. And like, what's my role in that? And I think of like the retail spaces in a lot of our, CTA, they're empty. And if we had like local, whether it's nonprofit organizations or incubator businesses with local chambers of commerce, I'm assuming they're empty because people can't afford them. I could be wrong, right? But it's just like anything that we can do to make those active spaces where it's bringing diversity. Like let's say we're giving it to a local community organization to do an after school program and you're seeing kids there and their parents and their grandparents. Like that's going to definitely change everybody from the neighborhood as far as what they do in those spaces and what they allow to be done in those spaces, right? Because if I'm somebody in the neighborhood who, even if I have a past of being an issue to the neighborhood, but now my niece, who I love, is in that space and that's where they get joy. I'm not going to let things that are going to disrupt that, take place in that space. And so the reason why I bring that up though is because I did notice on your the map with the slide with the puzzle pieces, it was a lot of people stuff, which is good. But then I only recognized one slide for the built environment. And what the research tells us is that people is the number one thing, but the built environment is the number two thing. And so I just kind of gave one recommendation about all of those, like those retail centers that are in the train stations and like, how can we activate them? One of the other ideas that came up in one of our previous meetings, CAB meetings, was around the existing hired security that we have, right? A lot of what they're doing is they're there, number one, for visually to be seen, but then number two, to be eyes and ears. I don't know, we had talked about this a while back ago about utilizing those teams to be doing public space assessments, right? And the story that I shared back in that meeting was right there on State and Lake. I was getting up at State and Clark, State and Clark for 18 months, 2 years, and there was a food stain on the main door to get in and out of the station for the whole 18 months, 2 years. And maybe our service teams don't have the capacity to be looking, at that level of detail. But when we have contracts with security teams and they're literally standing there all day, like, do we have a way for them to put in things that enrich the built environment, right? To make it show that, hey, there's eyes and ears and people are seeing things here. And, that garbage can that was tipped over yesterday is now upright and it's emptied, right? And I think it's a lot of like those things in built environment that can change perception ongoing, right? So when I see that, oh yeah, it used to be that there was the food stain on the glass for over a year, and now it's gone within a couple of days or the next day. I think when we can get to there, we're starting to change people's perceptions around, these spaces being taken care of, these spaces being community spaces that we're all responsible for. And that's what I have. So.
No, I appreciate your comments. I did want to respond to your comments about concessions and just our spaces in general. There has been a lot of discussion in recent months, and especially as we have been preparing our 2026 budget around spaces, because I do think there is a recognition. Everything you're saying is spot on. I know there's members on our board who feel strongly about that too. And, we've been talking about, well, let me just start by saying part of the reason many of our concessions are empty right now is post-pandemic. They just couldn't do it anymore, right? And so we had better occupancy rates pre-pandemic. But as you pointed out, there are opportunities with that. And so one of the things we want to do is figure out not only how do you lease those spaces, but are there some creative things we can do along the way to make those spaces more welcoming and more family oriented, right? And just kind of feel like a space that's, for lack of a better word, sacred, right? And needs to be protected. We've also talked about bringing more art in the form of performing arts, right? It's, the idea of like, what if you brought a violinist to play some music, and it just kind of create an ambiance of like you're in a special space, right? And it's something pleasant. So all of that is definitely things that are on our radar. We are in the 2026 budget. We talk about adding some resources to focus on what we're more broadly referring to as equitable transit-oriented development, right? So whether it's opportunities to do the types of things you're talking about, but also are there opportunities to do things at a bigger level around the station? Because a lot of times, issues spill into our stations, right? If you are in a tough community, how do you do things that are going to lift the community and improve the overall area? So that then you're part of a revitalized community.
Sure. And I think, and I definitely can appreciate, I run an organization. I understand like the operations and the lens of value typically being monetary, right? Like how can this space bring value to the Oregon and CTA? Because how can it generate revenue? And what I would encourage as we're going through this new process is to think of value in a different way, right? Because if we went to those spaces, and I'm specifically talking the ones that they've been dead for even before the pandemic, right? Like, I can definitely see how during the pandemic, some spaces, but there's a lot of them who before the pandemic happened, they were like defunct already. But how can we as a CTA bring joy through those spaces? Right. And I think if we can change the ecosystem in that transit space and around that transit space, then eventually those spaces will be places that we can look at to be something that can bring in revenue. But we have to do something different than what we've been doing. And so why not bring people joy because that's in essence, you're helping mental health, you're increasing ridership, all of those intangibles that we need to be better at, that the science says changes the way people feel and how safe they feel. And if they feel safer, they're more likely to ride more often. And if it's a good experience, right? I'm going to go and I'm going to see this or that happen, or, oh, that made me feel good today, right? So I'll go ahead and stop there.
Yeah, no, I appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Take comments from other members of the board or questions. Scott?
I just want to reinforce one of the things that you said. Many years ago, we discovered in one of our businesses that the illusion of a safe space often has to do with the appearance of that space. It being clean, it being neat, being organized, artwork, that sort of thing. And that illusion over a relatively short time period becomes a reality just because of the numbers of people that end up feeling more comfortable and feeling more ready to use that. Of equal significance, your suggestion that the value of the space becomes defined differently. An example, there's a storefront in the CTA stop at Morris that I use all the time. It's been empty for quite a while. Yet there are services in that community that need to have space, and that space would be positively utilized by those kinds of services. I'm not talking about necessarily social services, but it might be overall socialization community services where people have the ability to come and meet and engage. Just one more thought.
Thank you.
And I want to piggyback off of this thought too, just sharing an example of this sort of thing that's happened in the city where a underutilized or just vacant space has been repurposed and brought new life to community areas. So the city introduced the Pop Park program a few years ago. I had the joy of leading the development of one of those parks. And that program converted these vacant lots into these beautiful, vibrant spaces, which also transitioned the visual aspects of the community, but also the way that people felt about those spaces around those new assets. So I just feel like that would be a really great thing to take a look at. I'm also happy to talk to you offline about, the parks that I'm familiar with and how those have impacted the communities that I've served. But though I think those are just really wonderful examples and really illustrate both those points that were made.
Yep, no, I would definitely want to talk to you offline. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions?
Yeah.
Ryan?
Thanks. Yeah, I can throw a question Flora's way if she's still with us. I appreciated bringing up other agencies that have done work in this space, other pilot programs, right? TriMet and BART and Metro Transit. I was wondering when their pilots started and what some of the results of those pilots have been, like what were the most exciting?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Brian. So for TriMed, as I mentioned, they started back in 2020, and they started with 7 safety response individuals, and what they share with us. So right now, I think they're up to 60, I believe, and they are funding them straight from their operations dollars. And what Andrew has shared with me, and I actually have seen them in action, is that has really created a lot of presence throughout their system. In addition, they have really gained a success in terms of what the relationship between the sheriff. They contract, as I mentioned, their law enforcement is contracted through the county sheriff department. And consistently, the head of the sheriff department has mentioned how they rely on having the presence of these teams be the first, entity of contact with individuals who are experiencing, issues of mental health or behavioral health crises, that, they shouldn't be the first of contact. So time and time again, they have really commended and consistently say how much they appreciate that collaboration, because clearly then the writers who are in need are provided the appropriate services and support. For Metro, they through their transit rider investment program, which is what they share with us, their security strategy was deployed over a 2-year process. They received $2 million from an allocation through legislation that was passed. They have focused on high visibility and enhanced social services. What they did differently, they had not done, was to really cast out a net to the community-based organizations to contract them out for certain specific services. So whether it's housing, mental health, behavioral health, health services, or just, social services. They through that program, they had about 10 different contracted organizations. The funding lapsed, but Leslie shared with me that they've learned so much from that process that actually they're going to continue with that model, and then they're going to be funding it directly. Leslie also noted that when, when she first came on board, I think, they only had the police, the transit police group, which probably was about 10 individuals. And if you were to look at the slide, she had 5 other different elements that overlay, the work of the law enforcement on transit. So she did emphasize that the partnership with the community organizations has been crucial to the success in terms of how she is going to move forward. She did mention one of the areas that Veronica mentioned was that one of the learnings was ensuring that there's effective coordination. Can you imagine, you have 20 different organizations, right, deploying them throughout Minneapolis and the 7 counties that they cover, knowing like where the housing entity is versus the mental health. It requires a lot of high touch, a lot of communications and coordination. So I know that she did share one of those lessons learned. For BART, they started their crisis intervention specialists back, I believe, in 2020, and was part of their reimagining their public safety program. And they had an incident whereby they had to react to creating more community focused transit engagement. And so they started with a small group of individuals, and they focus again on providing visible presence and a welcoming environment. I was there in San Francisco earlier this year, and I've been a huge fan of their approach since I've been doing this work. And these are individuals who are coming, clinicians. There are individuals who are coming from the behavioral health treatment side of the, behavioral health services. And so they're specifically looking for that type of capability. They have, I saw it in action where, there's, they get deployed in pairs of 2s. They go throughout the system, they're not reactive. They're engaging, individuals saying hello by name, how you doing, and really connecting, individuals as they, decide that they're ready to accept services. Throughout all those three agencies and plus my additional work that I've done, really navigating the ecosystem that was spoken about before. There's systems out there that are very silo right now, and transit agencies have had to be proactive in engaging, letting them know what is actually happening on our systems, which is an area that I've seen firsthand where there's very little insight from the public in terms of what is manifesting on our system. So really staying the course, staying consistent, trying to break those silos and bring people to the table so that the city, the county, the health systems, transit, all the law enforcement, academia, the airports, right? They're all at the same table, really case managing, the well-being of our riders who really need us to be connected. The other challenge that is very pronounced is capacity on, referrals for housing. Veronica talked about the wonderful success that the current team has had, but that takes, courage, that takes funding, that takes setting up those bridges, if you will, to be able to create those partnerships so that people can open their doors to make sure that when someone is ready, it takes a long time to gain the trust of an individual out there. So when they're ready, that you have that actual bed or the treatment facility where you can refer to, or sometimes just food or a pair of socks or whatever they might need. So agencies have been learning a lot. As I said at the beginning, this is something that's outside the transit operations, but they understand that it's necessary for them to, convene, bring people together and create partnerships that they've never really had to. So I hope that
Yeah.
answered your question, Brian.
Yeah, it did, Flora. Thank you. Okay, so Veronica, yeah, I'm really happy to hear like the TriMet scaled from 6 to 60. I wonder when they launched this with only 6 people, did they do maybe what, I forget if it was Metro or BART, did they start with 20 organizations or did they start on one problem and have KPIs that said, oh, this does reduce incidences, by 30% in just 1 year. Let's scale it up. I would really hope that, and I'm looking forward to the summary report. Are the problems we're solving, are they well defined? Are we going to even know after the pilot that we've had an impact on that problem? But frankly, yeah, no, I think this space is really promising and I'm excited to see where this goes. Also, I did want to follow up on the gun detection with Zero Eyes. I am frankly a little cautious of anything that uses computer recognition, right? I think that goes by a lot of names these days. But, ShotSpotter is not a fan. Chicago does not like ShotSpotter. And so I would really be hesitant for more police surveillance type technology. Maybe I'll revisit the presentation we had in the past and maybe they are different. But that's, in terms of community engagement, I would see that as a high priority, right? But okay, and then also I wanted to follow up on, yeah, Robert, I love the built environment stuff. I think, maybe, I don't know where this ranks in the list of complex challenges, right? We had criminal and unruly and code of conduct and behavioral health and unhoused, but I think the built environment could go a long ways for addressing smoking. I know this is a higher priority for the mayor recently. Signs that maybe say, no smoking. I mean, those signs have been around forever and I guess they're not working anymore maybe. So how can we change those to say, hey, smoking only allowed outside in the public on the sidewalk, right? Get them out of the trains. Don't hotbox our families on the way to work. Yeah, no, I really love the built environment stuff. And yeah, let's give away these commercial spaces, right? Just someone please fill them in. The more people on our transit system, the safer they're going to be, period. Yeah, sorry, a lot of notes there.
Thank you.
I'm really excited.
It's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
I had a couple of questions. So, in the conversation, did you consider any ideas on CTA's response to ICE at all? I've been hearing a lot from writers recently saying they feel less safe on the system, especially coming from writers who appear to be Latino or anybody who looks like they might not be a citizen according to ICE. A lot of those folks have reported feeling less safe. Is there anything that you see transit ambassadors doing to support those writers, like handing out know your rights information, like letting community partners know about like ICE sightings on the system, anything like that?
Just for context, when we had our workshop, this was back in August, so ICE was not an issue in Chicago at the time. I think, we're going to look at how these resources can be helpful to the general writing public and what the needs are at a given, point in time, right? The challenges that we know we've been dealing with for years now, in a more pronounced way post-pandemic, and we know that they're not going to resolve overnight, has been our focus, right? We see more instances of mental health issues. We see more instances of people under the influence, and a lot more people taking shelter on our system. It's a real need. And like I said before, we have some work that we've started, but how do we complement what we're already doing to make sure that we are providing more support, not just for the people who need the help, but to your point, the writers in general? What are the things that make them feel uncomfortable, right? It could be different circumstances depending on whatever we're living as a world in that moment. And then how can these Safe Write ambassadors help make, either address a concern or a question, and to make them feel more comfortable. And it might even be as simple as, I'm not that familiar with the system. I don't want to get lost. Ambassadors should also be equipped to answer some very basic questions around navigating our system. But yes, a big part of what we're doing is trying to make the more general transit writer community feel comfortable on our system. And so we'll look at whatever the issue is of the day, and try to support them.
And then one other question, I feel like I don't really understand the role of transit ambassadors in responding to reports of smoking. Let's say that a writer reports on the chatbot or approaches CTA staff and says, hey, there's somebody who is smoking in this train car. Would the transit ambassador be able to go and give them a warning, or would that be an automatic escalation to law enforcement for ticketing? What would the role of the transit ambassador be there?
I mean, it depends on the circumstances. So I'll tell you what we do today. And just again, for context, we do the missions that are very kind of proactive, looking specifically to see if there's anybody smoking. That's done by our canine security services. And when there are issues, CPD is nearby. They're not actively engaged in that process, but CPD is nearby if somebody becomes violent or as a result of being put out their cigarette. But when we don't have those kinds of resources immediately available, let's just say it's happening at a station where we don't have security or CPD, or just in between stations, when something gets reported, part of what we're doing this to some extent already, but we would like to add more resources so we could do more of this, where we could have somebody at the control center know about it and do one of two things: either dispatch the nearest resource to an appropriate resource, because we want to make sure the ambassadors are safe. We don't want to put them in a situation where we've trained them to deal with one kind of issue, but now we're asking them to do something else that's really not in their wheelhouse. But, you know, whatever appropriate resources nearby, either going to check on that. But what we do today that we do, I think rather effectively, is have the operator make an announcement. And we find that some people do actually put out their cigarette, because if we don't have a resource to go respond to it, and by the time, you know, we get someone there, like the train already reached its terminal, the trip is over, is just letting people know that we are becoming aware of these things and we're responding to them. And so that's one way that we're doing it, is having the operators make an announcement. But like I said, you know, our goal is that, you know, and hopefully if we get the funding that we need and a little more funding, like our ideal is to staff our control center with more resources that could do more of that dispatching, or even having more coordination with the operator.
So in the interest of time, I'm gonna just so that we can make sure we have enough time to hear from our next presenter. Unless there's like absolutely burning questions that have to be asked. I'm gonna just kind of cut it here. But I wanted to thank you for spending time with us today and answering all of our questions. This was a really great presentation and very incredibly informative. I'm really looking forward to that report as well. And the next steps, I'm really also looking forward to seeing what partnerships come out of this as well.
Yes, no, and thank you again for your participation, and all of the suggestions and feedback is really appreciated. I think there's a lot of good ideas, and we certainly don't have all the answers, so I appreciate that.
Thank you, Veronica and Flora.
Thank you so much.
Right, so I would like to call our next presenter up. We have a very special presenter who is coming from the British International School, Miss Jenna Martaza. Am I pronouncing that correctly? She's in the 8th grade and she's going to present to us on her ideas about safety on the CTA. So welcome, Jenna. We're happy to have you with us.
I can't share because
It's coming out to support.
Over there, just like sign it on. Next slide.
okay. So this is my presentation. It's about so this initially started as a project in English class where we had to this was last year, where we had to develop a law for for a neighborhood that we selected. And I chose to do like safety on public transportation. And I narrowed it down to the CTA because that was more specific. So the overall problem, so while on public transportation, people experience a lot of different forms of harassment and abuse. And there are many different types of harassment experienced on public transportation, which leaves people with trauma. And the use of public transportation is directly impacted because of this issue. And this has not been like addressed with any sort of policy yet. So that's kind of why I'm like pitching this, because like So this whole like idea kind of came to my head because my brother, when he was 11, he rode the L, and this man under the influence, he kind of just he kind of just like exposed himself, and it's just like really like scarring for him, like as it would be for anyone. Um, Especially at such a young age. So that's why I'm just kind of just like bringing this to everyone. This is the wording of my law, like it was, because we had to create a hypothetical law, and while I do understand that the fine is really, really like not reasonable, yeah, I do understand that, but I just like that that's what my teacher said to do because you know, it was well, it was still it's still assault, so there should be a fine for it, but probably not that large. So that's another thing I am suggesting, like a fine or a potential temporary or lifelong ban from the CTA, because I feel like one of the best ways to address this is like punishments, because I feel like or with like consequences, because I feel like that's how people will listen. And yeah, so this is just kind of the specifics of the law. Um, so like the forms of transportation under this law include the CTA rail system, which is the L, and the CTA bus system. And I'm really just pitching a policy rather than any kind of law. But yeah. And so the behaviors and etiquette under this law. So every person should treat all citizens on the vehicle with respect. And under this law is considered disorderly conduct if a citizen engages in sexual assault, verbally or physically, or any type of assault, and indecent exposure, and stealing or vandalizing someone's belongings. These are all misdemeanors, but I just feel like there should be some kind of like repercussions for committing them or perpetrating them on the CTA. So the justification, this policy will increase the use of public transportation, which will raise money for the city of Chicago, and it'll enable citizens to feel more comfortable and safe. It'll discourage future violations, and it'll speak for those who don't have a voice, like children, and it'll reduce carbon footprint, traffic congestion at the stations, because with the bus there'll be less usage of cars and one vehicle. This is some data for the justification. This is a press release from the Illinois Policy Institute, and the heading is Chicago faces roughly one crime every 3 hours on the CTA. And this shows how well the Illinois Policy Institute found that CTA Green Line riders were the most likely to be crime victims, with around 1.9 out of 100,000 rides ending in a crime, which is pretty high amount. And then as of December 26, 2024, the number of crimes being committed at the CTA stations hit the highest level since the pandemic, with residents with residents experiencing 1,356 crimes from October 2023 to September 2024. And these are like pretty high amounts. So I'd say like a policy might be the best way to address this, because I feel like with repercussions, this will limit the amount of crimes that are being perpetrated. This is some other data for my justification. This shows how women experience double the amount of crime and harassment on like any form of public transportation. And this can just show how so many different people can feel just very uncomfortable on the CTA, and that can just really decrease the usage of the CTA. Some potential signage. This is what I was working on at school. It's really not as significant anymore because because you know, laws and things like that, they typically have signage, and so people would know. So I feel like if this were to be addressed, maybe there would be some kind of signage at the station or something. I don't. This is just an idea. This is just focusing on the CTA directly. So as said earlier, according to the Illinois Policy Institute, Chicago faces around one crime every 3 hours on the CTA. I'm just gonna pull up here, it's easier. And the Green Line route for the CTA has the highest crime rates. 1.9 out of 100,000 rides for the Green Line route ended in crime between October 1st, 2023 and September 30th, 2024. The red line route for the CTA has the second highest crime rates, where 1.7 out of 100,000 rides ended in crime. And although these crimes on the CTA have been decreasing since 2024, the crime rates are still higher than pre-pandemic. The CTA has also issued an anti-harassment awareness campaign and partnered with CPD for higher security. But I just feel like a policy will just reinforce like good etiquette even more. So these are some factors that tie into crime rates on the CTA. So many things contribute to how citizens act on the CTA, including being under the influence of like drugs and alcohol. And it is estimated that 11% of citizens who ride the CTA have a disability of some sort, which includes mental illness. And the mental illness can majorly impact how people behave on the CTA, as most of the time citizens with this disability are not completely aware of their surroundings or actions, and these citizens can be victimized. Also, communities with higher poverty and unemployment rates can also have higher crime rates. So these are all factors that tie into like why crime rates are so high. And often those who do ride the CTA and perpetrate misdemeanors are in relation to these factors. However, this law should still be established. And I think that maybe the way it is addressed to certain groups of people could be different. So like if there's someone who had mental illness, you would definitely have to address it differently. Like you couldn't, if it's due to them not being aware, you couldn't like give them a fine because of that, you know? Because like, you know, different people come with different circumstances. So that's why I feel like different groups should be addressed differently, and the circumstances should be different. I feel like if there were to be a policy like this, there would be a large impact on the community. There would be a change of use of public transportation. So with this law being established, people will feel more comfortable using public transportation, and the usage of it will increase. It will also create a cleaner environment, meaning that more people in one vehicle and less emissions from cars. And this law can also mean that the community will be safer, mainly on public transit, and as it ensures a better experience and an improvement in society. Before the conclusion, there's some more recent data that I've gathered. So I don't know if anyone's heard, but there's like a loop puncher. So according to NBC Chicago, as of October 2nd, 2025, a woman was punched in the back of the head on the L train. And this woman also claims that she is much too anxious to ride the L train again, even though it's her everyday route. And this can really show how assault and harassment has a large effect of people using the L, the bus systems, etc. So that's why I feel like I feel like if there were to be a policy, then maybe this could stop. Like not stop, but decrease. And this woman was also not the only one who has faced something like this. Fox 32, there was a woman on Fox 32 going her normal route down State and Lake on the Brown line and was smacked across the face. And according to the victim, Amanda Hayes, the security guard did little to nothing. So I'm also suggesting that like maybe more hands-on and like more hands-on attempts at like authority and such. And if the policy is not something that could ever work, I do have one more suggestion. Like this one relates more to young people. Maybe like on the L train or something like that. There could be a separate car for teens with added security, like added surveillance, added ambassadors. And even if it's just $1 extra, or like even if like the circumstances changed, I feel like it'd be worth it for safety, because even at my own school, many people in like 10th, 9th, and 8th grade, they take the they take the train to school and back, and they take the bus. So I just feel like as of like today, a lot of kids and teens are riding the bus and the L, which is why I feel like increased safety would be better. So in conclusion, this policy is a solution to a very crucial problem, public transit behavior. The law centers on forms of transit, behavior, and consequences for those inappropriate behaviors. And many people have engaged in inappropriate behavior previously, so this law is a way to build awareness and target the issue. A safer community and public transit can build a better society and more transit use overall, which can solve those many problems I was talking about. It can reduce carbon footprint and things like that. Okay, thank you. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Jenna, for your presentation and for taking time out from your school day to come down here and listen to us ramble on for an hour and a half and then giving us your ideas. Very, very nice presentation. Thank you so much. You had a lot of really interesting ideas. I think that a lot of policies already do exist for some of the ideas that you presented. But maybe it's a matter of like how, we, figure out how to actually apply it. And I think the previous conversation that we were having about safety ambassadors definitely touches on a lot of the things that you brought up today. So my question to you is, as you were listening to that part of our conversation, what did you think about that? Were there any things that came out from the presentation that you think hit any of those points and resonates with you?
Yeah, I really liked the ideas of like the technology being used to reinforce certain just to reinforce good etiquette. I feel like that's a really good use of like resources. And I also like the idea of having the ambassadors and having just like better surveillance, because I feel like because I also suggested having a separate car. I feel like that would really apply well for anything like that. And I feel like just that little bit of added security could go a long way. Just like since so many kids and teens are now riding public transit, I feel like that'd be really useful.
Tell me more about this teen car. It sounds interesting.
Well, okay.
Due to like what does that look like? What does it feel like when teens and how would you even direct them to a particular car? Like is there something special about it, or is it just kind of like they just need to be off to their own, or like?
I just feel like now, like I've just heard so many like kids and teens that are riding the bus and the train. So I feel like maybe just like a little bit of separation from the adults, 18 and over, could be good, because there's obviously a lot of harassment and abuse that happens. And I feel like just with that, like with a separate car, maybe just like a little bit extra, just like so a separate car would really be beneficial, because it would just increase the safety. And what I was saying about this this teen car was that was that it would have added surveillance and security, which also connects to the previous presentation, where added surveillance and ambassadors would be beneficial. And I agree, and I feel like that would work well here.
Is your concern that the younger riders might be the ones that are causing more of the challenges that are on the system versus the adults?
I feel like I feel like the children and the teens could be more of a victim, because a lot of
The victim. Okay, I just wanted clarity on
because I feel like I feel like because now a lot of children and teens are riding alone without their parents. Like a lot of kids in my school are. So I just feel like if we had that extra level of safety and a little bit more just like confirmation and on what could happen, rather than just having a bunch of adults and a bunch of teens together, I feel like that'd be better.
And I want to open it up to others, but I want to ask one more question because I'm curious about this car. So it can't be just a regular train car, right? So in my head, I'm like, what does this look like? Like, are there snacks? Are there things that are gonna like attract young people to want to go to this particular car?
I just feel like maybe I didn't think of it like a lot of things extra and like it would have to attract them to. I just felt like maybe it would be something mandatory where were like 18 and 18 and younger, like they could have they should go to this separate car because if they felt like unsafe or anything, you know, just have like
A safer environment,
yeah,
like as if
yeah.
it's kind of thinking about the first car because there's an operator in that car, like kind of saying, you know, young people maybe go to that car as opposed to the rest.
Yeah.
It reminds me of how in some countries there are train cars that are specifically for women because women are more likely to face harassment on public transportation.
It also reminds me of Metro. Metro has quiet cars. And so, you know, just kind of like designating spaces that are kind of just reserved for that particular demographic or, you know, interest. Sounds, you know, it sounds interesting. Maybe something.
It was just an idea, but I was really trying to focus on the I was really trying to focus on any like repercussions for perpetrating any of these like crimes. And I know they're already like crimes in general, a lot of these things, like vandalizing, stealing, assault, things like that. But I just felt like if it was one collective policy and if it had pretty strong repercussions, that the amount of it would just decrease overall.
Thank you. I'm gonna turn it over to.
Sure. So I want to thank you for coming out and sharing your thoughts with us today. I think it was very well done. I work with thousands of youth in Chicago and I've been doing that for over 20 years. So I've helped raise thousands of young people in our city. And I am so scared for all of our kids who go to school, especially coming out of 8th grade, and they're going to high school across the city and asking them like, how are you getting there? How's your, that's why I chose to be on this board. So that we can be a voice for, you know, young people like you. And thank you for sharing your voice today. We've had these conversations. I think a few months back, we talked about, because of all the Chicago Public Schools, they have a lot of funding shortfalls, but they still pay a lot of money for busing. And in other cities like New York City, you see so many young people taking public transportation to school, but we don't see that as much in Chicago. And we see this big part of the CPS budget going towards private busing because of this issue.
Yeah.
And so this is an issue that I want to assure you that that we're working on. That's important to us. Thank you for I love the idea of the teach on, right? And the first thing I thought about it, what does that look like? I thought about how we do the Christmas cards, right? You can tell that's
their car, like,
one.
yes, exactly.
But I think I want to assure you that you know, for those of us on the civilian side, right? Like, we're not city employees. We're just like, you know, we're civilians. We're on this committee because we care about our city and public transportation. And we share the same concerns and want the same results you do. So for this board, there's a student seat. There's student seats as well. So when you get into college, high school.
No, they're high school students.
So next year, because you're in 8th grade, when you get into high school, I expect to see you up here.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think one of them is graduating. So there's going to be an open seat soon.
So thank you.
Thank you.
You make your family and your school and your community proud with your commitment to social responsibility.
Thank you. Yeah.
Peter?
Mr. Henderson here, Jen, I want to thank you. This presentation was amazing, and I just want to let you know how proud I am of you. This was very well thought out, and I want to go back to what you mentioned before at the end of the slide about that serial puncher and about people feeling scared to ride public transportation, because you mentioned that was her main route. So now in her head, she's like, okay, if I go out tomorrow and I gotta go to work, am I gonna get punched again? I'm gonna feel scared. And I see you have that same concern as I do. And that's another thing to piggyback off of yours, because you had great things too. Making people feel safe and being engaged within CTA. If we gotta get somewhere, that portion doesn't even have to be worried about. I wanna make sure I get to home, I get back home safely, I get to school, I get to work, and not feeling like you have to be, assaulted, sexually harassed. I don't know if you heard about the girl that recorded on the Brown line of this dude saying that he was gonna cause bodily harm if he doesn't talk to her, sat right next to her in an empty train. And that was a huge red flag to me, because I'm like, why are you harassing her? Why can't you just go somewhere else?
Yeah.
She's going home. Don't leave her alone, so that's another thing that I'm very concerned about, making sure people feel safe. So I'm glad you really did your research and decided to do something related to CTA. And again, I'm very proud of you. Thank you.
Absolutely, safety is such a cool aspect.
Are there any other comments or questions?
Do a quick one. Thank you so much, Jenna. I love the children only car. I say we put it at the front of the train. We paint them yellow like a school bus.
Yeah.
And then
That's an easy one.
Yeah, right.
it's not school hours, right? Where you're going to school or coming back home. Even then, like it sends a reminder, hey, kids ride the train, right? Like let's act like a family here. I love it. Thank you, Jenna.
Yeah. Thank you again, Jenna. I just want to say, as somebody who rides CTA several times a week, most of the time I feel pretty safe, but there have been a couple of pretty scary moments. I've had people call me really inappropriate things and threaten me because for sitting in the priority, say I have a disability, but people don't often realize that because you can't really spot it unless you're a trained medical professional. I've had to deal with people threatening me, and I think it's really important. I just want to say thank you for coming here and taking the time to share your thoughts. We do in law, there's already some things in the law that the courts can do things about violence on public transportation. I don't know the exact situation of what's in the laws right now, but I think there may be, at least for assault, I don't know about for other crimes, but it can be something called an aggravating factor, which is that's basically a fancy word for a reason to give somebody a little bit of a harsher punishment. And in more cases, I think it could be that there'd be an aggravating factor for the crime taking place on public transportation, because that's just people trying to go to school, go to work, go to the doctor, whatever. And so I would definitely encourage you to share this with your state representative or state senator, because I think that a lot of these changes are going to come from the Illinois legislature.
Yeah. I took it to the alderman actually for that.
It's nice.
Yeah, and then there was a few CTA representatives there. So and then
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a good idea. Thank you.
Yeah. It's a lot of the time when we make laws about things that are crimes, those usually come from the state government.
Yeah.
And I think that they would be very interested in hearing about this and just learning more about your ideas to change the law to help protect riding public transportation.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, Chairperson Raby, I think we have no further questions or comments. Thank you very much, Jenna Martaza. We appreciate you. I was following Jenna, we will be getting ready to adjourn it shortly, in the next 3 minutes, but we do have lunch in the conference room, and you and your mom and Ms. Hartman are welcome to join the CAB members for lunch, for those who will be able to stay. Chairperson Raby, if you want to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is new business.
New business, Ms. Greenlee, is there any new business?
Chairperson Raby, there is no new business.
Okay, wonderful. Well, may I have a motion?
To adjourn. You said it at the same time.
It's been moved by Robert Castaneda that we adjourn. It's been seconded by Peter Henderson. We'll take a roll call vote. I will note for the record that our Vice Chair, Robert Johnson, did come to the meeting and he has already left the room, but we need to add him to the roll for today. We'll take a roll call vote on the motion that's on the floor. Scott Vanderwill,
Yes.
Ryan McCray,
Yep.
Caroline Pavlovic,
Yes.
Chairperson Raby,
Yes.
Peter Henderson,
Yes.
Robert Castaneda.
Yes.
Chairperson Raby, the motion carries.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a great week.